we all are. Every woman is, it's just that remembrance. And it's not related to age. It's like maiden mother crone. Every woman is carrying these kind of goddess codes, these sacred feminine wisdom codes.
I'm Heather Grish, and this is the Wisdom of the Body podcast. This podcast explores the idea of body intelligence as the real key to learning the knowledge of life, or what we call Ayurveda in the ancient language of Sanskrit. We do that by connecting with today's creative leaders and experts who will help you listen to your body, trust your gut, and live in deeper harmony with nature. Come join me as we unlock the golden door to clear, direct perception and become very deep listeners. You can find the Wisdom of the Body podcast on Apple, Spotify, and Stitcher. You can also follow us by joining my email at heathergrish.com or on Instagram at heathergrish. I know you're going to love this podcast, so take a second right now to subscribe. Today I'm here with Jacqui Lalita. Jacqui is an herbalist, a medicine woman, a dancer, poet, and a teacher devoted to helping women rekindle the flame of their wild feminine and deepen their connection to the natural world. In her Wild Wisdom School of Earth Medicine and Embodiment, she leads 6-month herbalism apprenticeships, belly dance trainings, dance and detox programs, and inspirational courses, all online. She's the author of 2 poetry books, Romancing the Divine and The Rebirth of Venus, and considers the beauty of the living earth and the ancient stars to be her greatest muses. This is Jacqui's second interview on the Wisdom of the Body podcast. Jacqui is one of my muses. Her first interview was on the divine feminine, rewilding and liberating the body. And after you listen to this episode, you can check out that episode as well to hear more on these topics from Jacqui. Jacqui and I actually grew up together in Rhode Island. We hung out in high school, just 2 normal kids, and we both grew up. And when we reconnected years later, we discovered that we both took very unconventional paths and ended up doing the work of carrying forward the healing lineages of plants. So today, we're going to dive into the topics of self-acceptance and natural healing. I asked Jacqui to come back on the show so we could talk about the wisdom that she had learned from a big surgery and a big healing journey that she went on actually a couple of years ago. So thank you so much for being here today with us, Jacqui.
Oh, my pleasure. So good to be with you, Heather. And I agree with everything you shared about us growing up, except the fact that we were normal. We were normal. But yes, I love that. And I love that just the way the journey kind of circumambulates and that we should meet again so many years later and be able to share in this way together. So thanks for having me on again.
I always thought that you were more normal than I was, but
I thought you were more normal.
I was kind of like wild in high school.
Yeah, I was a bit wild. I mean, I think I still am, but it's just the definition of wildness is evolving.
Yeah, exactly. Jacqui, anybody who follows you can see how much beauty that you add to the world with your dance and your poetry. And she's basically a goddess. Okay. So in our last interview, we talked a lot about your dance background, and we talked a lot about how therapeutic dance is for the divine feminine today, for this idea of rewilding and liberating the body. And these are huge themes for women right now. Maybe they've always been huge themes, but I know you've been working as a natural healer for many years, and you've also had your own journey with natural healing, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. And like so many healers, in astrology, we have Chiron, the wounded healer, and so many healers have become the healers they are through walking through and facing their own wounding.
Yeah. Can you tell us why this idea of natural healing is such an important topic for you and a little bit about your own journey?
Mm-hmm. Well, I feel that just within us humans is an innate healing capacity, that the body by divine blueprint actually knows how to heal itself when given the right conditions. And so for me, working as an herbalist, it's always been my endeavor when I'm working with people to just help guide people's bodies back to their own homeostasis, or what I really say is homeodynamicism, because the human body is never static, but being able to just guide us to that place of balance, of equanimity, especially within our nervous system and our foundational, endocrine system. And that from there, it can be really just natural for our bodies to heal. And so this idea of natural healing is working with what is inherently already within us, and then working with the medicines that have been so generously given to us by Mother Earth, of which we are made. So when we work with these plants, we're not working with something that is really outside of ourselves in that way. So I've shared, before online about my journey of just finding this natural path of healing. And I don't know if you know this, Heather, but when I was 17, back in the crazy Rhode Island days, I fell into a lobster pot of boiling water, and I had second-degree burns on my whole backside. It was quite traumatic. I was in the hospital for weeks, and the doctor matter-of-factly told me that I'd be scarred for the rest of my life. And, that was just sort of it. There was nothing else to be done. And by grace, I just got guided to aloe vera, and I started doing the aloe and really connecting in with aloe. And within a year, the scars were completely gone. And that's when I really knew that there are other ways. And I started just slowly. I was so young, but I started just dabbling and reading herbalism books. And then, it grew into a big fascination and just studying indigenous ways of healing and ways of listening to the earth. And then just over the years, really developing a very deep trust in this way of healing and in the plants. And yeah, it ended up becoming a big part of my career path. But what had happened is, in that time, from teenage me, so now it's 18-year-old me, I kind of succumbed to the whole pressure. There was the 90s and this external validation. I had this boyfriend that told me it would be the best thing I could do to get breast implants, and it would make me make more tip money where I was working. And I just kind of impulsively leapt into it. And 18-year-old me went and had this surgery. And I very quickly, by the time that I was 20 and already kind of getting into yoga and meditation, I pretty quickly regretted this choice. But I didn't, at that point, that didn't seem like anything I could do about it. So I just said, okay, I'm not going to have another surgery. And I just went with it. And I kind of tried to tuck it away as this thing that I didn't have to think about too often. So years later, I'm still carrying this stuff inside of me, and my body just started screaming to get it out. And I had been feeling for a long time that I wanted to have this explant surgery, but I had heard, that it was a long recovery, and I just kept pushing it away and pushing it away. And finally my body was like, get this stuff out. And so I had the explant surgery. It's been over 2 years, and it was one of the most incredible gifts that I could have given to my body, to just remove these foreign objects that were essentially, sitting over my heart and lungs for so many years. And what happened was, every mystery symptom that I had been experiencing vanished within days, not even months, within days. And I just felt a kind of clarity that it was remarkable. My eyes got more clear, just my vision, everything started to improve a lot after that surgery. And so I shared my journey online. And one of the things that happened was, in sharing this journey, I think I was able to give permission to some other sisters to let go of this societal conditioning and this idea. I mean, whatever it was inside of me, the young, tender 18-year-old me that felt that, she wasn't beautiful just as she is, and that she needed to do this. It was like a burning down of that kind of cultural conditioning. Very, very liberating on so many different levels. And now I see that there's quite a big movement right now to explant, and it's really powerful witnessing this.
Yeah, I've had quite a few clients who've had the surgery. I think from what I've seen, you're much more familiar with it because you've, more immersed in it. And thank you so much for sharing that and for sharing your story. You said that your body was like screaming to get, because there's a lot of things that people get in their bodies, right? We break a tooth, right? And they put in a filling or a crown or something, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there are instances where we're walking around with things that are not Heather or not Jacqui as part of our body,
Right.
right? Like whether it's a plastic or titanium or whatever, you lose
Mm-hmm.
your foot or you lose a tooth or whatever. A lot of times there's a functional reason that a lot of people are getting things put in their
Mm-hmm.
bodies, right? And I know what you went through is a little bit different, but whenever we have something put in our body that is not us, the body has different reactions to it. And it sounds like, what was your body? You said it was screaming to get it out. What was happening?
Well, I will say for so many years, I didn't have any, health issues. Some women I've come to understand a lot about breast implant illness, which is a real thing. And I didn't even know it existed. I think the first decade that I had those implants, I never knew that that existed. But now I see that some women have symptoms very quickly, immediately after. And for some, it can take years, for the onset of those symptoms. And so there were many years that I just felt good. Everything was good. And then it was a couple of years. I had the surgery pretty swiftly after, but that year before, I started getting this kind of rash that turned out to be like a vasculitis, essentially my blood vessels. So it wasn't a skin issue. It was actually my blood vessels were leaking blood out of them. And I knew that there was something just kind of pathogenic in the quality of it. This was just kind of my own intuitive. I actually went to a dermatologist and I had like skin tests and, they showed that it was vasculitis. And I told the dermatologist, I deeply feel this is from these breast implants. And he was like, no, it could never be that. And I just had this feeling. But I also felt for the way that I take care of myself, the way that I eat, all the herbs, the meditation and lifestyle, I didn't have the kind of vitality and that life force that I was used to having. It was like, I just felt really depleted. So I knew something was off. And when I had the explant, literally within a couple of days, the rash was so crazy. And my friends, it was all over my legs, this vasculitis. And it was concerning looking, to say the least. It was, there were just marks, all over, bright red. When I say screaming, it was like my body actually looked like it was angry. And so within 3 days of the explant, all of that started to fade away. Now there's no single trace of any of it. And actually, when they took the implants out, there was stuff floating in one of them. So, there was definitely some kind of pathogenic, which I now understand is quite common with these things. And this is not to scare any women that have them, but just to be aware. I feel there is great empowerment in our awareness. When I had the surgery, I actually tried to change my mind when I got there. And I told the surgeon, I don't know if I don't want to go through with this. I was terrified. And he said, well, it's just saline, it's just salt water. And I said, but I don't want to have to have another surgery. And he told me, well, they'll last for the rest of your life, so you'll never have to. So that was completely unfactual. And salt water is not safe. The salt water is what is encased inside of it, and the scar tissue that your body forms around it. It can become very much a breeding ground for pathogens. So, I just really encourage women. I'm not trying to say for everybody to run out an explant, but if you're somebody who is considering getting implants or doing this, just to really do some good research and see that there are huge risks to it. And also, there's such empowerment. For me, the most beautiful, sexy, magnetic, vivacious qualities that a woman can embody are not about her breast size, but about her comfort within her own skin, just feeling really good in your body, regardless of external validation. That creates such a magnetism that I haven't really found that most men care whether a woman, she has implants or smaller breasts. It's more about how she feels inside of her body, the way that she's carrying herself inside of her relationship to herself. So
Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. The body just, sometimes when it detects something, it's the same thing with a pathogen, right? Or, the immune system gets involved. And
Mhm.
that sounds like it was really uncomfortable and amazing that you went through that. And, people are getting things done to their bodies for functional reasons, and people are getting things done to their bodies for cosmetic reasons. And they're a little bit different, although I don't know that our minds maybe can tell the difference sometimes, because what's so cute about your story, and I mean, I have a million stories of doing dumb shit growing up, like, getting tattoos, and, I know a lot of people get tattoos, but I kind of view that as not something that's so bright at this point in my life, or, getting things pierced and things, there are these things that we do to our bodies to improve function, right? But then there are these things that we do because we think it's going to make us more beautiful, or I don't know. I mean, I think maybe even getting a tattoo once, when I would get a tattoo, I think I got it because I thought it would look cool, maybe. I don't know. But the journey of overcoming that, like, you had this choice, like, because I've actually had a tattoo removed as well. It didn't
Mm.
cause, a health issue necessarily, but it was like something I wanted to go backwards. I just wanted to honor how my body was. Like, I wanted to honor how it was created. I didn't want to,
Mhm.
be, it sort of became like a defacing to me. Like, I felt like I was
Mhm.
defacing this like beautiful creation that I was given, that I didn't create, that something else created, which is my body, right?
Mhm.
And so when you think about, something like natural healing, for example, because I know it's a term that is kind of triggering for people sometimes, especially with COVID. It's almost like a
Mhm.
flag term. Like, if you believe in natural healing, then you can't believe in science or something.
Mm.
That seems to come up, which is obviously a trap that doesn't really honor the circumstances of our lives.
Mhm.
Whenever we're faced with something that feels like an impediment in our day-to-day lives, we have a choice, right? And we sometimes make stupid choices, but we learn from them. Part of life is learning and having the opportunity to make choices. But one of the things I love about what you went through at that young age was that here you are healing. You're learning about the aloe and how to heal this burn with the aloe. And at the same time, also making a choice that was maybe something that ended up being harmful for your body, right? So in
Mhm.
that same
Mhm.
time where we might be doing one thing that's healthy, we may also be doing something that's not healthy. And I feel like we have to all understand that we can do that we can make multiple decisions. Like, we're making so many decisions every day, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're in this like dance of duality, and just because we're doing something so wonderful and we're so deep on our path, we have to also leave room for the humanness and the messiness. And also, it takes time to come to really trust a path or to trust a way of healing. And I was so young at that time. I knew the aloe was helping my burn, but I don't think that I had the full trust in the path of natural healing because I didn't have the wisdom of experience. And I was still caught up in, listening to the boyfriend or whatever the story was that the implants would make more tip money, and sort of choosing from a much different place, of course, 18-year-old me, than I would choose now. So, yeah, this movement of women, explanting has been really powerful because a lot of women are kind of going back to the place of where they were when they made that choice and realizing that it's just not congruent to where they are now. Now, for some people, you get tattoos. I've got friends that the tattoos are just like lifelong works of art, and part of their expression, and not really for anybody else, just for them to express. There's so many different reasons why that's the beauty that we can each just fully express and embody as we see fit. So, not everybody is going to feel a need to go back and undo a choice from the past. But for me, a choice of getting implants from that young age and carrying them, it became such a burden to me. And it became so not aligned with the work I'm doing, which is about empowering women to just like love yourself here and now, whatever body shape, wherever you are, not to wait until you lose those 30 pounds or you get some kind of validation from a man. It's just like radical self acceptance here and now. And so it felt a necessary step. And I totally understand because I'm also an astrologer. I understand from the transit that I was in that there was no more putting off that particular surgery and this particular healing. And, that just comes with readiness. And I have no criticism for anybody who's choosing to have plastic surgery. And like you said, there's so many different reasons, why. I think it's just so important that we listen and honor what our own body is telling us and really make sure that we're choosing whatever we're choosing, that it's coming from the most authentic place that we can access within us and not from outside pressure or societal conditioning, that we each really, turn to our own internal compass.
And I'm also curious about, because from the physicality perspective of maybe the physics of dancing, because you had them for a long time, and probably for a lot of the time when you were training in different styles of dance, you had the implants there. Did dancing feel different to you when you had them versus, because I remember, when I had a kid, I had never had boobs in my entire life. And then when I had a kid, suddenly I had boobs, and suddenly doing every, certain yoga poses, everything felt weird to actually have boobs. Did you have that experience kind of in the opposite direction?
That's a good question, but actually I really didn't. It's weird. I think I got so used to having them, but then the moment they were gone, it was just like I was just back in the original divine blueprint, and there was no having to adjust at all. It just felt really liberating. It also felt really incredible, the sensations, because everything sort of started coming back online in a way that was like, yeah, I remember, just experiencing touch and feeling like, oh my goodness, there's no impediment. There's nothing between, so it's all been very positive. I will say, there have been women who go through explant who do struggle after with just, they got so used to the large breasts and the implants. But for the majority of women, it seems to just be an overall just so feeling so good and so just back in your own natural skin.
So I have kind of a fun question to ask you. We grew up together in high school, and I know that I think you were in honors classes too, right? You were one of the smart kids.
Sometimes.
I think you were one of the smart kids, and from what I remember, and we both took these paths that I would, say non-traditional paths. Most of the people that we grew up with probably think we're quite strange doing what we're doing, right? Or, just because it's quite different than what we were used to growing up. But I mean, I don't know about you, but for what I do now is very different than my parents can't even pronounce Ayurveda still. And they thought I joined a cult and stuff like that when I started studying it. But it feels like there's, especially with women, I would say, like our age and maybe even younger, right? So like 30s, 40s, 20s, 30s, and 40s, that women are going through kind of this, they felt like they missed something, that they're missing something in their lives. And, that maybe they weren't taught something growing up. There's a lot of stuff about, the reproductive system where I was like, they just gave us that talk in 5th grade and then told us to be afraid of getting pregnant, things like that, where people are feeling suddenly, wait a minute, my body can do what? Especially with women, there's like this big awakening, but, people are trying to recover something now that we feel we missed growing up. What do you think it is that, being raised the way we were in the public school system and stuff like that, like, what is it that they missed teaching us?
Oh, interesting. I'm snickering over here, just having a vision of our high school health teacher. But anyway.
The blonde lady, the lady with the blonde hair.
Fur coat and the Corvette.
Yeah. And I remember she used to make us do those butt squeezing exercises. Do you remember that?
I mean, I haven't thought about her since high school, but when you're talking about health education, I just have this vision of her with this giant fur. And I was such an animal activist, such an animal rights. And she'd get out of the tiny Corvette with this giant long mink coat on. Anyway, no judgment at all, but it's good to remember the funny things. And yeah, how maybe not comprehensive the education in sexuality was that we got in our younger years. First of all, I know you and I were not taught the sacredness of sexuality. I don't know how many children are, in the high school sex ed classes are being taught about the sacredness of our sexuality. I think the really important lessons I have had to learn experientially, and lessons, for instance, in discernment, lessons in, the true power of our sexuality and how to yield that, consciously. So these things, being kind of taught just about what can happen, like the bad things that can happen from sex or how to keep ourselves from pregnant, it's so one-dimensional. And so getting to really experience my sensuality as something sacred really was something that I started exploring when I discovered belly dance. And I was actually celibate for 2.5 years in my 20s, and working with belly dance, just feeling my own sensuality that wasn't about sexual encounter with a man. It was really allowing this part of again, this is something that's very innate. I feel this innate feminine just magic and wisdom, like when you said she's a goddess, my initial thought always is like, we all are, every woman is, it's just that remembrance, and it's not related to age. It's like maiden mother crone, every woman is carrying these kind of goddess codes, these sacred feminine wisdom codes. And so my exploration about what I missed in my earlier development started coming through just in working with my own sensuality, and then being able to then later share that, in partnership and relationship as something sacred. That just, I think ultimately it's like one of the great myths that we all struggle with as humans is this myth of separation, right? That we are separate from one another and that we are separate from our source. And this myth of separation can cause so much suffering. It can make us feel so alone, so misunderstood, so kind of cut off. And then we begin sort of searching for this missing piece inside of another, wanting somebody or something to complete us or to validate us. And so it's just part of the dance of humanness, and coming into this recognition that we are not actually separate from our source or from one another. And there is this just inherent connection that can really help connect us into our bodies and help the connections that we share with one another to deepen. So it's been such a journey. It continues to be a journey, even now after walking this path over 2 decades. And there's still such humbling teachings. And I'm still learning so much. I guess it will be never ending, really.
This idea of self-acceptance, and natural healing, what do you think the self-acceptance piece has to do specifically about natural healing?
I think so many of us can be our own worst critic, and we can give all the loving kindness to the ones that we love, but then leave none for ourselves, or be quick to judge or compare, especially when we're younger, and so this idea of like feeling not enough, or I can't fully accept this thing about me because it's so different. And so self-acceptance is one of the greatest forms of self-love, because it's coming into the like, I am a direct emanation of the divine. And so how could I be anything less than beautiful? How could this feature that might be different, be anything less than beautiful? It's such a different way of being inside ourselves and being in a relationship with our body, to just love the things that make us different versus trying to change them to fit into a mold that looks like, however we feel like it's supposed to look. So the self-acceptance is one of the key pieces of work when I'm helping, women on their journey of whether it's healing from a chronic health condition or healing in their relationship with body and food, and all of this is coming into that place of like, can you accept yourself right here and now? And the funny thing is, knowing what we're now coming to understand about the connection between our mind, our subconscious mind, and the neurology, neuroscience that tells us as we think, so we become it. So the funny thing is that as we accept ourselves and come into that right relationship with our body, we can actually really accelerate the healing process. There's such a direct connection between how we think and feel and whether we're judging and self-criticizing and self-loathing our body. And that is such a roadblock to our own healing, our emotional well-being, our emotional mental health, and also our physical health, the degree to which we, because what is self-loathing and self-criticism and not accepting ourselves would be, I would call that self-degenerating, right? It's very degenerative for our health. You can feel the contraction around it versus self-acceptance, self-love, being very kind to ourselves. This is very regenerative. It's very life-affirming, can really help accelerate any places within us that are needing healing.
Why do you think we're wired to do that, to sort of not accept ourselves?
Oh, I think a lot of it is, upbringing and conditioning and just that old saying that we can be our own hardest critic, and it's so powerful to the relationship that we have to ourself is such an important relationship. And yet, how often does that relationship get put on the back burner? I see this and I know this as a woman, especially for women, because we are such nurturers and caregivers. And it's so easy to put ourselves on the back burner or to just, feel unworthy of love or feel unworthy of our own loving kindness. And I don't know where. I think there's just whatever the origin is, it's time for that to burn down and to be replaced with a new origin story that tells us we are so worthy of our love and kindness and full acceptance here and now, not some future time, not when we, get to a certain point in our healing journey. It's just here and now.
So, Jacqui, what does the wisdom of the body mean to you?
Well, I connect the wisdom of the body with the wisdom of the body of the living earth herself, because I feel like we are born of this earth and we carry that direct wisdom from our mother, the Mother Earth. And so when we look to the earth, we see all around, when we're in nature, we really see all around the signs of symbiosis, everything working together to create a harmonic state, things working in this way together. And so the wisdom of the body is understanding, of course, our entire body is working symbiotically. The organs are working together with one another, the endocrine system, the nervous system. There is this intelligence that is all working together, and no part of that body is separate. So when we try to separate, for instance, a kind of health condition as only that one condition, when we lose touch with the connection to the whole body as a living ecosystem, this can be, detrimental, because everything is working just like in the body of the living earth, the symbiosis, all things working together. Our body is working in that way. And so within that symbiosis, there is this incredible, just divine intelligence. And when we listen within and we develop our intuition to listen to that intelligence, it can really help us in knowing what our body needs and being able to listen to what our body is trying to tell us. I feel like wisdom it speaks to us. Sometimes it speaks as a whisper, and then sometimes it speaks as a scream, like my body had to get my attention because I wasn't really listening to the whispers, and it had to scream with that vasculitis to get those implants out. But the body speaks. And so the degree to which we can listen is something that's really worth us developing. It's a skill, right? It's a skill that we might not have developed earlier on, but it's just like when you want to learn to play the guitar and you have to get the chords and you have to pick the actual guitar up and practice. And listening to our body's wisdom requires practice, but it's so powerful because the body knows within this very ancient primordial divine blueprint of our ecosystem, there's this intelligence that can speak to us, and it can give us signs when it's off balance. It can tell us, yes, when we're in that right alignment. And so just being able to listen in, I think, is very powerful.
Now I want to go out, take a walk in the woods and
Oh, yes, that's always a good idea. And I'm so into right now in the herbal apprenticeship that I'm leading that we just started. And so we take this journey from the root chakra all the way up to the crown across these 7 modules and the herbal correlation. So the herbs that correlate to the root and then the organ systems that would be affected in each different place. So we're working with the physiology, but also the energetics. And because we just started, we're working with Muladhara and the roots, which is so perfectly timed because we're in Aries season now, and Muladhara is ruled by Mars, and this is the time of Mars. But one of the practices that I invited everyone into that I've been just loving so much is earthing and just getting barefoot on the earth, walking with bare feet, touching our bare toes to the earth, sitting just directly on the earth. It's so incredibly grounding just to tune into that electromagnetic frequency of the earth.
Beautiful. Jacqui, I have a feeling people are going to want to get in touch with you. So how do they do that?
Well, you can find me on Instagram, and it's just my name at Jacqui Lalita, just all together. And then my website as well is JacquiLalita.com. So those are 2 great ways. Feel free to reach out, send me a message. I lead all kinds of trainings. I'm also just now this year about to start doing in-person retreats after a long break from that. So definitely love to connect.
It's been so wonderful catching up with you today, Jacqui. Thanks so much for being here.
So good to be with you, Heather. Sending lots of love to you and to everyone listening.
I want to thank you for listening to this show. It brings me great pleasure to provide this content to you. I also want to let you know that I'll be making some very amazing announcements soon. And if you're not already on my email list, then I encourage you to go over to my website and subscribe to my email list so that I can keep you informed about these announcements that are going to be coming up very soon. So my website is heathergrish.com. That's Heather, GRZYCH.com. And I look forward to getting these important announcements to you very soon and connecting. Thank you for tuning in and dropping in with us today. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. I really want to hear your feedback. To learn more about my work, visit heathergrish.com. That's Heather, GRZYCH.com. And meet me here next time on The Wisdom of the Body.